These talks are based on lifestyle intervention to resolve intestinal inflammation in various aspects of health. So we're going to define chronic inflammation. We'll see how microbiota, these bacteria and the intestines are involved in inflammation. We go towards dysbiosis and how we can restore gut health. Okay, so if we talk about the gut, we're actually, you can define it as the gastrointestinal tract. Today, we will be focusing mainly on the large intestines. The main functions of the large intestines, in addition, and the intestines in general, in addition to digestion of food and absorption of nutrients, we have to keep in mind that here the intestines are also an immune learning hub. So it's basically a school of immune cells. Immune cells get information from the environmental repertoire for potential threats, and therefore the immune cells are quite active. So, in terms of if the immune cells are activated, it's important to also regulate them so that we switch them off. And this is where inflammation and chronic inflammation is directly linked with immune function as well. In addition, the intestines produce various neurotransmitters and hormones. Example, for instance, serotonin, which is a transmitter which is important for bowel movement, but also important as an emotion driver. It provides as well essential and beneficial microbiota. So it's the environment of multiple bacteria, 100 trillion bacteria in our large intestines only, and within these different species, up to even more than 2,000 species. So if we think about the metabolic repertoire and the metabolic repertoire of the bacteria in terms of genes, in terms of DNA code, are about 100 times the metabolic repertoire of the human cells. So it's extremely important in terms of the presence of these bacteria, the diversity of these bacteria, and the balance of these bacteria in terms of metabolic function. Digestion and absorption is important in terms of metabolism, as we just indicated. Immune function is also affected directly in terms of defense and also tolerance. But also there is the gut-brain crosstalk, and therefore important in terms of mood, pain, and satiety. The main problem is actually when we have a disbalance in these microbes. The microbes have both health promoting, so beneficial for health, but also can be harmful if the disbalance is towards specific, for instance, pro-inflammatory bacteria. Most of the vitamins are produced by bacteria, which are not capable of producing them. So vitamins are synthesized by this metabolic repertoire offered by the microbiota. Metabolism, as we discussed before. So this has to be in balance so that these three main functions are in place. When there's a disbalance, we end up to have specific metabolic syndromes and diseases such as obesity and diabetes, autism and autoimmune disease, and also, as we're going to discuss today, the inflammation of the intestines, but also systemically. These bad gut microbes or any disbalance would result in increased inflammation of the intestines and, of course, poor quality of life. So if we have to target the chronic inflammation, the first thing is that we need to see it. And this is we launched this year a research project called FLAME. I mean, I remind you as well, those that are members of the microbiota and health group, that FLAME as a topic and the name to this project was actually selected by the group. So we're looking at intestinal inflammation, early detection of lesions, inflammatory lesions. And here I would like to use an analogy. which is extremely important and why we actually selected the name flame. If you think about the flame on a matchstick, yes, I'm pretty sure that you will try to stop the flame before it touches your finger. Unfortunately, chronic inflammation is clinically silent, so it's very difficult to measure and to see, and therefore it's extremely important to find methods and ways how to actually see it. And this is exactly what happens. Because it's clinically silent, and the flame touches our fingers without we seeing the flame approaching. And this is where we get symptoms. And therefore, most of the patients would have symptoms, and we would need to restore at a symptomatic level. Ideally, we would see the flame before it touches the finger. And this is what we are working on to have better technologies and tests to see the flame before it is symptomatic. Okay, so we do a lot of health innovations as well to target chronic inflammation. Inflammation is definitely a complex biological response to harmful stimuli. Okay, this could be pathogens, it could be cells that are damaged, irritants from environment. Okay, and it is really complex, so it's a series of physiological responses. It is critical. Inflammation is critical as a critical component of immune response, and definitely plays a crucial role in defense against infections and tissue repair. So we have acute inflammation, which is short term, and this is the response to specific activators of the immune system, and it is the recruitment of the immune cells to injury sites, infection sites, and it provides a pro-inflammatory response. This is important because this is protection and tissue repair. Chronic inflammation, on the other hand, is long-term, and it is therefore associated with persistent tissue damage and other conditions, including immune dysfunction. So that's why we need to have the right tools to measure and see chronic inflammation before it becomes, it results into a symptomatic condition, meaning that the flame touches the fingers. So here we have the normal inflammatory response on your left in the gray boxes. So inflammation is healthy as long as it is an acute inflammation, tissue is being repaired, immune response is being done, and then the most important is that there is resolution. So the inflammation is resolved and everything goes back to normal. It's only when we fail to resolve this inflammation, it becomes a chronic inflammation. Unfortunately, when there is a chronic inflammation, any inflammatory responses will become excessive, and therefore it would result in tissue damage. Microbiota, the bacteria in our intestines, have a very important role because they interact, as we said, with the immune system and promote tolerance to this immunity and therefore prevent excessive inflammation. This is done via using various things. So they produce different metabolites, such as the short-chain fatty acids, example, butyrate, and these all have an anti-inflammatory response and also regulate the immune function. As we said before, acute inflammation, short-term, activates the right immune cells, goes to the site of injury, produces pro-inflammation, physiological adaptive mechanism, restore the structure, and maintain homeostasis. This is normal. Unfortunately, in the terms of dysbiosis, which is the disbalance in the bacteria, and the lipid imbalance, we have this chronic inflammation, results in overactivation of immune function, and that is equal to pain and loss of motor function. Now, there are various ways how to regulate these microbiota, include both actual diet intervention, exercise intervention, and other supplementation to actually make sure that the list and the balance of this microbiota is in place. As you can see here, All right, this is the result of gut dysbiosis, inflammatory diseases, autoimmune disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, which are metabolic disorders, atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease, and anxiety and depression. So all these aspects can be prevented by rebalancing the microbes in our intestines. As I said, we are extremely involved with lifestyle medicine. Here is the presentations. So we presented our also work at the November Congress of the European Lifestyle Medicine Congress in Hungary last year, okay, where we showed that setting and keeping the right balance of omega-6 and omega-3 lipids is important to resolve inflammation, whilst measuring diversity and abundance of microbiota, and therefore identifying the cause of inflammation, we can actually set specific interventions, lifestyle interventions, to rebalance the microbiota dysbiosis. Lifestyle intervention involves a number of aspects. In addition to nutrition, it's also stress management, specific physical activity, substance use and excessive medicine use. We look into that, environmental exposures, sleep, sexual health, and fertility. So all these are aspects of lifestyle interventions to rebalance microbiota. Now, yes, we can measure this gut disbalance through a dysbiosis test. So it involves identifying a dysbiotic index. So what is the score in terms of how severe the dysbiosis is? We look at functional bacterial profiles, and then we characterize the actual diet interventions. Now, if you look at the score, which is the dysbiosis index, a 1 and 2 score is a non-dysbiotic. At DI, a dysbiosis of index of 3 results is a mild dysbiosis. 70 to 80% of irritable bowel syndromes have actually a profile which is above 2. And if it is 4 and 5, this is severe dysbiosis. One would need to really look into and refer towards inflammatory bowel disease interventions. And then we look at actually different functional imbalances. If there are bacteria that produce butyrate are low, we make sure that we give that intervention to increase this bacteria. But in the meantime, we can also provide some butyrate to ameliorate the condition. So these are some lists of different bacteria like Akkermansia and F-Prosnitzi, which are key gut health markers. Of course, we also look at pro-inflammatory bacteria, which is important to keep them at a low level. As I said before, lifestyle pillars, different ones, all right? Nutrition, exercise, anxiety. Social connection is one which I didn't mention before, but is extremely important as well. So if there's a disbalance, can we restore it? Yes, it's restorable. We need to restore lipid profile to resolve the inflammation itself. We need to restore dysbiosis to remove the cause of the inflammation. And then one would need to do a prebiotic and dietary intervention adjustment so that it is maintained and sustained.